What's the difference between, acting, good acting, and incredible acting? Craft, right? Acting is like, yeah, okay, it's like junk food acting. It floats along. Good acting is like, okay, there's something going on there. But great acting is all about truth. It's all about believability. The highest compliment you can pay an actor is, I believed you. Where does that craft come from? Well, today we're going to talk about the greatest influences in the world of this profession, the greatest acting teachers and their influences and what they were about. So I hope you'll join me for this adventure. I'm looking forward to this one very much. My name is Jim Jarrett. I'm your personal professional private acting coach if you want to. And if you do, subscribe, hit all the things. We got a lot of content for you to help you out. But no matter what, I hope you join me today. So here we go. Okay, well, the greatest teachers in the world of what we do. Ready? Constantine Stanislavski, Michael Chekhov, Lee Strasberg, Stella Adler, Sanford Meisner. Those are the Mount Rushmores of this profession. Okay, now look, these days there's a lot of different acting teachers. A lot of them are very good at hype and marketing and things like that, so that you've heard of them. But in terms of just truly elite master teachers of acting, it's a rare quality because things have just really become watered down. That's an understatement. But man, there were some purists back in the day, and today we're going to talk about them. So let's first and foremost let's talk about the pioneer of all of them. Everyone's standing on his shoulders, and that's Constantine Stanislavski. Now, you've heard the name. If you're starting out, I'm sure you've heard the name. He's this Russian mad scientist, if you will, this actor-director who created this group of actors, not created, but he founded this studio, this lab, really, because he was trying to experiment. He's trying to figure out how in the hell can we quit winging it? Is there a way for actors to work, a practical approach that can support their process of working on a part? And he experimented with a lot of different things. Like any great first pioneer of something, he literally was like blazing through a cornfield, first one creating a path. He had no mentors for the most part. Yeah, the profession acting teacher didn't exist at this point anywhere on the planet because there was no craft. Up to this point, it was acting, and everyone's acting their asses off. And so Constantine Stanislavski developed this approach that became known as the method, his method, his process for the actor to work. And there were some cornerstones to the method. Some of the most common known to the lay people and the industry, honestly, is what? Well, first of all, he was a pioneer at breaking down the script into what are called beats, these sections, these actionable sections, so that the actor could execute that action. His second great contribution had to do with the inner life to the actor's process. Effective memory, emotional memory, sense memory are all attributed to Constantine Stanislavski. Stanislavski comes over to the United States in the late 20s, early 30s, and he comes over to share with the world, what he's learned, what he's learning, what he's doing. And he brings over a group of actors and people of his way, and it really just blew away New York City, the theater scene, the actors and directors. Everybody flocked to see what he was doing because it was revolutionary. Again, in the United States, there was absolutely no acting teacher or craft whatsoever at this point. Zero. The American theater scene was very immature at this point. Eugene O'Neill, our first great playwright, hasn't even begun to friggin' write yet. And there's no film, obviously, and television, of course. And so the American theater scene was very immature. A lot of acting, again, a lot of farce and big presentational stuff, right? Just very entertaining and big. And anything else was pretty much bullshit. It just was thin. Okay, because there's no way, there's no process. Every once in a while, an actor would have a moment on stage with the other actor where they'd slam into each other, and that magical little moment became like intoxicating for the audience and the actor. But in terms of having that be the norm, that hadn't existed yet. And so when Stanislavski shows up, he just blows away the New York scene, and people just gravitate, want to know what the hell he's sharing, and he was very generous with it. He wanted to share it. He wanted to communicate what he was learning in hopes that others could benefit. He was very unselfish that way. And there was already a group of people, I guess I'll stay on this thread. There was a group called the Group Theater the most influential acting group of actors ever assembled in the United States ever, since, before, then, after, whatever. Because in that group of actors were Lee Strasberg, Stella Adler, Sanford Meisner, along with Elie Kazan, hello, Frank Chanton, Clifford Odets, Luther Adler. Shit, it just goes on and on. The group of people that came together. I mean, this group was at its infancy. And when Stanislavski disseminated his teachings, the elder statesman of that group, he was in his early 30s, was a guy named Lee Strasberg, an actor. And so he started, after Stanislavski left to go over to Europe, Strasberg took over the teachings. But we'll get back to that. We'll jump to that in a minute. Let's come back. Let's finish off with Stanislavski. So again, he dedicated his life to his way, this approach, but he was also open. One of the things that became a cornerstone of the method, at least in the United States to this day, is effective memory and emotional memory. Ready? Of which Stanislavski eventually abandoned it because he realized that it was, as Sanford Meisner once said, irresponsible. His great protege, who another teacher we're going to talk about, Michael Chekhov, had a nervous breakdown. And it's from that process that Chekhov split from Stanislavski, felt that his way, what he was working on, was unhealthy, irresponsible. Did it create could you get in touch with emotions and from going back to these moments in your time, in your past? Yes, you could. Was it healthy? Sometimes not. And so but eventually Stanislavski agreed and abandoned effective memory and social and emotional memory, at least to that degree that it was taught and glommed onto in the United States, because it became like a fucking holy grail here, like an obsession with acting teachers. First, the most of which was Lee Strasberg. And this is not a bag on Lee Strasberg, Dale, to be as historically accurate as possible, if I possibly can here. Okay. So with that, so Stanislavski, of course, continues to teach and be a pioneer, but out of his group comes what he called one of his great proteges, one of his great students, most talented, was Michael Chekhov. And Chekhov was a beautiful actor, and as I said, he had a nervous breakdown at some point, and it's about this time, shortly after, is when he recovered, he has a break from Stanislavski, a major break, because again, he did not believe that his approach was healthy. So he wanted to try to find a different approach, a different way. And what Chekhov's great contribution to the craft of acting as teachers is all about physicality. From the physical action, the life and the muscle memory will remember what to do and how to proceed. Again, these are oversimplifications, but for how long we have here, you can of course Google all this stuff, Wikipedia this stuff, and look it up. But he also was a great pioneer and a wonderful teacher, and in terms of offering up what he believed was a key to believable work. And then we have again the group theater. Lee Strasberg, Stella Adler, Sanford Meisner all come out of the group theater. Holy hell, right? So Lee was, as I said earlier, Lee was the elder statesman of the group, and he took off what Stanislavski taught. But he and Stella fought right away over what Lee was interpreting, and in her opinion, misinterpreting about what Stanislavski had communicated. And Lee became obsessed, these are Sanford Meisner's words, with these effective memory, emotional memory exercises. At first, the group was enjoying them overstated. They were realizing the power of what was possible by getting in touch with these memories and then having that river, that inner life going, and then putting the text on that river, what that would do. And it was very profound. You knew, but it didn't take long, about less than a month, for the group to start pushing back. And the big pushbacker was Stella Adler. She was a force. She had a big personality, and she and Lee fought constantly, and they definitely fought over this. So Lee continues to, well, here, sorry, let me to bounce around. I'm going to have to tell this more like this. Ready? Stella goes to Europe and tracks down Stanislavski after he had left New York to get clarification on his teachings. And she spent several months following Stanislavski around, trying to get clear. And she comes back to New York City, walks into the group theater rehearsals right up to Lee Strasberg, and theater history happens. The two of them got in a fight that's epic, and they screamed and yelled back and forth, and she said, "You're a fake and a liar, you don't know what the hell you're doing." He says, "I don't give a fuck what Stanislavski says. I don't teach the Stanislavski method, I teach the Strasberg method." And in that moment, he quit the group theater, and he spent the rest of his years teaching his way, his interpretation of the method, and making it his own. He actually, people think that Lee founded the Actors Studio. Lee did not. That was founded by Kazan and others, but they invited Lee to come teach because Lee honestly was floundering. He didn't have much of a successful career for the next decade or so. It's not until he came to the group, the Actors Studio, that he began teaching, and he began to find a place there, and certainly eventually started leading classes and having a major influence on a lot of different people were already established actors. That's the one thing that a lot of people resented about Lee, is he took credit for all the people that came to the studio like they were his students. They'd studied other places. you had to be good to get into the group theater. You had to be well trained. Sanford Meisner, really, he and Lee were diametrically opposed to their approaches, and we'll get to that in a second. But Sandy also really resented how Lee claimed that these were his students when they were actually Sandy's students and other people's students. But anyway, again, Lee's contribution, there's no doubt. His great protege, I guess, one of his greats is Marilyn Monroe, and somebody that struggled with a lot of this effective memory, emotional memory work. It really was traumatizing for her. Her husband, Arthur Miller, was trying to get her away from Lee constantly. I'm sure, he certainly had other proteges, but she became his most well-known. And next, we have Stella Adler. Stella comes out of the group too, but she was an established actress. She was a beautiful ingenue. She moved to L.A. after the group, and she started working, and her brother Luther Adler also, and they had a lot of connections, and she's a schmoozer, man. I don't mean that in a disrespectful way. She's just a powerful force of a woman, had a presence. And when she eventually got back to teaching, something she did more part-time, Stella, she was a grande dame. She wore a big flowery, big coat and a big hat and had a candelabra on her desk. And when she walked in, the whole class, like several hundred people were in Stella's class. You had to audit for months, if not years, before you ever actually worked in front of Stella. And there was a line out the door to do it. So, and when she walked out into the classroom, everyone had to stand. It was a standing ovation, and she would bow. And so she was a show. And part of it was tongue-in-cheek, but, part of it too, she had a big personality. And her great contribution to the craft of acting was character work, because she was such a character, right? But she has a wonderful teaching. She once said, don't ever put anything on your body or the stage that doesn't feed the life and soul of the character. Stella was all about being able to create multi-dimensional characters, helping actors grow beyond playing their natural selves. But she did it from the outside in, meaning externals first, and then moving internally. But that said, she was a wonderful influence. But here's the best story I can tell you about this. At her retirement party, it was at Tavern on the Green, and of course everybody in the industry came, right? And when she got up to speak, here's Stella's words. She says, well, there's actually only one real legitimate acting teacher in the room. That's Sanford Meisner. She goes, I did it for the fun. And everyone, of course, just laughed, right? Because Stella was all that. She loved the attention, and she loved the holding court. And she was wonderful at it. And she and Sandy were extremely close, Sanford Meisner. They remained close to her dying day. She passed before Sandy. And then finally, my teacher, Sanford Meisner. That's my teacher. Somehow through the grace of God, I got to spend a total of 6 years with Sandy, 2 in his professional private class, 2 mentoring under him to teach, and as an actor in training, emerged as his last teaching protege, and then another 2 years before moving on from Hollywood. So the one I can speak most about is, of course, my teacher, Sandy Meisner, the acting teacher that influenced more careers, who's who of acting alumni and actors than all the top name teachers combined, from Bobby Duvall and Steve McQueen and John Voight and Grace Kelly and Craig Peck and Sidney Pollack and Susan Sarandon and Joanne Ward. It just goes on and on and on and on and on. Sandy was an artistic genius, and he was all about not acting. He wanted truth, and where he diverged from Lee Strasberg and the method was over emotional memory, effective memory. Sandy thought it was unhealthy, thought it was irresponsible. He said actors are not emotional guinea pigs to be dissected by amateurs, meaning directors, playing around with this. Did he see some benefits to it? And he, again, Sandy would say, whatever works, works. If you want to use the scars of your past, the wounds of your past, great. But he wanted us to heal that shit. He didn't want us to be these tortured artists. He didn't want us to have to keep, and I'm the biggest advocate for this as well. You don't want to be dredging up the past and all your crap. Hell, heal that stuff. So, because if you don't, that stuff's going to come up and haunt you in other ways anyway, all these wounds and stuff. Instead, what Sandy believed was the most important quality was a childlike imagination, a vivid imagination. As Sandy once said, none of this is real. It's all make-believe. Hamlet ain't real. The more you have a developed imagination, you don't need a tortured life to be an actor. You don't need some screwed up past. You don't need all this trauma shit all trapped in there. What you need is a vivid imagination, a childlike imagination, because with a childlike imagination, there's just about no place you can't go. You can create whatever in the hell you want, from the highest highs to the lowest lows, with a developed imagination. So there's more to it. Sandy, over a 65-year teaching career, created a brick-by-brick process. It's a 2-year training program where each class builds on the previous class, the previous week, the previous month, the previous session. People know about the repetition exercise. I laugh because, nothing infuriated Sandy more than people thought the Meisner technique was the repetition exercise. The Meisner technique is a hell of a lot more than the repetition exercise. exercise, but it's what's out there on the internet. It's what's out there in books. That's what people think the Meisner technique is. The Meisner technique is all about truth. It's all about teaching you how to take that cold piece of paper and turn it into a believable human being. It's all about not acting. It's all about authenticity and freedom and working from your gut and getting out of your head, doing all the work that the audience never sees as you work on the part. But when it comes time to work, turn your brain off and be present and work from your gut off your partner and not serving up your rehearsals and not chasing emotion. It's all about freedom, authenticity, and truth. So, I mean, I can go on and on about my teacher, and this thing's already running a bit long, but there's an overview of the 5 great influences, the Mount Rushmores of what we do. Stanislavski, Chekhov, Strasberg, Adler, and my teacher, Sanford Meisner. All of them wanted the same thing. They wanted truth in the work. And I'll finish with my teacher's final quote, and that is, he used to say, hey, whatever works, my way is not for everyone. Whatever works, you're not all the same. You're not all pianos. There's no right way or one way to get to that instrument. If you think that emotional memory, sense memory works for you and has value, use it. But most of all, don't close yourself off from learning something new just because it contradicts something I taught you. So Sandy was not autocratic. He did not have ego. He had 20 students in his classroom. He could have had hundreds of people. He didn't teach for $1 bill. He was a purist. He didn't have agents and publicists promoting him. He was a simple man who was all about truth and acting. Anyway, obviously I'm a little biased, but it's not even bias. It's just what I know. It's what I really know. So hope that helps you. Okay, check other stuff out. There's other stuff here to hopefully helps you as well. And most of all, I hope that if you really are supposed to do this, you can find the mental toughness and the balance to hang in there, because this is tough. To become a working actor, man, you got to be resilient and healthy. And that's my biggest hope for you of all. Okay? All right, I'll see you soon.